Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GinJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here on Friday, May 3rd. We're going to have a fun day here today, but we're going to start it off with some power rankings from The Athletic. Really respect what The Athletic has done over the last several years with sports media. Obviously, they don't cover the Jaguars full time. They have had some guys do that, but I guess it wasn't profitable enough for the bottom line. But looking at The Athletic's new power rankings from Josh Kendall, the Jaguars rank 26th out of 32 in these power rankings. Like, excuse me? We've got to talk about this here. 26. That's insane. We're going to talk about it here today. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out ginjag.com/shop. Pick up some new Duval gear. Become a channel member here, right here on YouTube. Links in the description below. So, Josh Kendall from The Athletic dropped these power rankings, and quite frankly, to me, I mean, they make zero sense, right? Here's what he said about the Jaguars, who, again, ranked 26 out of 32 teams in the NFL. Says the Jaguars like LSU players, and they don't much care what everyone else thinks of their new players. Jacksonville started the draft by taking wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr., the first of 3 Tigers drafted. The next 8 players all ranked among some of the biggest reaches in the draft based on consensus mock draft rankings. So yeah, like if you've been paying attention since the draft, the Jaguars drafted 3 guys from LSU. They reached compared to the consensus board at every opportunity, which should come as no surprise. That's generally what Trent Baalke does. He does not care about what the consensus board says. He values his own board. We'll see how that plays out. Right? But on what planet are we expecting this football team to go into the 2024 season as the 26th best team in the NFL? I don't see that anywhere else, right? NFL.com just dropped some power rankings where the Jaguars were 14th. You have them at 26th? Like, is this like a different timeline, alternate universe? What are we looking at here, Kendall? He did join Hacker on Hacker After Dark over on 1010XL, somewhat explained himself. He said the Jaguars finished losing 5 of 6 games. He said they lost Calvin Ridley. He didn't really like their draft. Okay. So the losing streak, the losing 5 of 6 games, that's a fact. Losing Calvin Ridley is a fact. The draft, again, remains to be seen how that plays out. I think adding Brian Thomas Jr. was a great pick, and I think a lot of people do. But simply stating the fact that they lost 5 of 6 games down the stretch lacks context in a big way. Like, who was injured? Who was healthy? Who was calling plays on defense? Who was calling plays on offense? Have those situations changed? Did the Jaguars get better in free agency? Eric Armstead, ever heard of him? Mitch Morse, ever heard of him, right? During that skid, the Jaguars, they were heavily injured. From the quarterback to the top wide receivers to your most talented secondary players. Devon Hamilton was a shell of himself. The left side of the offensive line was injured. Luke Fortner was a hot mess at center. So like you're telling me a team with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Doug Peterson dialing it up, which I do believe will happen in 2024 if you're reading and paying attention to what Doug Peterson has said so far this offseason. A healthy offensive line with better depth and better starters. They're not much better than what we saw at the end of the year. Okay. Or, a healthy defense with a much better coordinator in Ryan Nielsen and Eric Armstead dropped into the mix. That's not better than what we saw at the end of the year. Okay. Like, if that's how you want to view this thing, sure. Whatever. Kendall did tell Hacker he likes Trevor Lawrence. There's probably only a handful of quarterbacks in the NFL he'd rather have right now. Likes Eric Armstead, really likes Ryan Nielsen. He covers the Falcons. He thinks Ryan Nielsen is a great coach, and if things had gone a little bit differently last year, Ryan Nielsen would have been one of the guys getting called for head coaching interviews. He says, but those improvements will be reflected in September's rankings. The Jaguars have to prove themselves. A little bit odd. In my opinion, every team has to prove themselves every year, outside of like a very select few. The power rankings should reflect where you think teams are going to be in 2024, not where they were at the end of 2023. And I think basically with these power rankings, he has basically cherry picked and talked out of both sides of his mouth with these power rankings. He says the Patriots and Commanders, by improving their quarterback situation, should rank ahead of the Jaguars. Okay, well, they didn't improve their quarterback situation at the end of the 2023 season. Have the Jaguars improved their situation since the end of the 2023 season? Doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a long list of teams that should not be ahead of the Jaguars on this power rankings. I just can't really make sense of it. Like, how are you going to sit here and tell me that the two of the three worst teams in the NFL are better than the Jaguars just because they drafted rookie quarterbacks? That makes 0 sense. 0 sense. So, and you're also giving them credit for what they've done in the offseason while not giving credit to the Jaguars for what they've done in the offseason, which again looks like obviously changing defensive coordinator, probably changing offensive play caller, getting healthy, adding talented veterans to the football team, adding a wide receiver who, yes, Brian Thomas Jr. is a bit of an unknown as a rookie. Wouldn't that same logic apply to Drake May and Jaden Daniels, who are on teams that are ranked ahead of the Jaguars? I'm just saying. Like, I hear what you're saying, Josh, but it does not make any sense in my opinion. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. But when I look at Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis, Gabe Davis, in my opinion, very underrated at this point because he's a guy that is a vertical threat, can go up and get the football, can create separation down the field, and he will do all the dirty work, which is a valuable thing in the NFL today. And he's not like some guy that drops the football all that often. Like, he's more consistent in terms of his hands than some of the guys the Jaguars have had. Calvin Ridley was inconsistent last year. Now, he was coming off of not playing in 2 years. But Calvin Ridley's hands, they've always been a little bit of a question. And then you saw, again, maybe not always in the right place at the right time. I think Gabe Davis is going to be in the right place at the right time. I think based on everything I've seen from Brian Thomas Jr.'s tape, he's going to be doing the same thing. He's got strong hands. He had a couple focus drops last year. But overall, much more consistent hands than Calvin Ridley. Was in the right place at the right time more consistently than Calvin Ridley. He's bigger, stronger, faster than Calvin Ridley. You could argue that the Jaguars are going to have a better receiver core than they did last year. And again, will they have better health? Right now they do. Christian Kirk's healthy right now. They did not have Christian Kirk down the stretch last year, who is Trevor Lawrence's most reliable target. Again, I think these rankings are absolutely ludicrous, but I will say this, the Jaguars historically, they are much better for whatever reason when they're talented and people kind of count them out, which I think is exactly what you're seeing happening here. And Kendall's not the only one, in the NFL media that kind of looks at the Jaguars and says that they're probably not a playoff team. They're headed in the wrong direction. We've seen a lot of criticism for the Jaguars. And some of it's fair. Like, Trent Baalke did bungle the situation with Calvin Ridley, in my opinion. He has done a lot of weird things throughout his time as Jaguars GM. The draft was pretty weird. To me, the LSU defensive line picks were the really egregious ones. When you talk about the consensus board, I don't value it that much. Like, I know the consensus board can do well. I get that. But I don't understand how you could watch Jarian Jones and put him as like a 6th or 7th round prospect. I had him as a 3rd round prospect. That's where the Jaguars drafted him, right? I don't know how you could look at DeAndre Prince and say that that's a reach. DeAndre Prince is a good football player. He should have been late day 2, early day 3. So there's a lot of picks there where I'm like, is consensus really right here? I don't think it is. I don't see it with some of these consensus rankings. I really don't. Now, NFL.com, as I mentioned, they dropped their power rankings and the Jaguars were at 14, much more reasonable. I would have them even slightly higher than that, but at least that's within reason. I currently have the Jaguars at 11 overall, which is 7th in the AFC, which would be, just fighting for a wild card spot. That's where I have them. I've been consistent about that. Like, I still think they're a good football team. I think they improved on the trenches. I think they improved their coaching. I think that, with health, especially at the quarterback position, they'll be in a much better spot in 2024 than they were, down the stretch in 2023. People forget that this team was 8-3 before the wheels fell off with the injuries. That's where they were. So we'll see how it plays out. Would love to know what you guys think. Drop a comment in the comment section below. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out ginjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, become a channel member right here on YouTube. Y'all have a good one.